The morning of October 12th started like any other at Buckingham Palace. Tourists crowded behind iron gates, cameras ready. Red-coated guards stood frozen in their posts. The air smelled like rain and diesel exhaust. But what happened next would shake the royal household to its core. Sergeant David Hale had been a grenadier guard for 11 years. He knew every face that belonged at the palace gates. Every car, every protocol. That morning, he was stationed at the south gate when a black Mercedes pulled up just after 9. Tinted windows. No flags. No royal markings. But the driver flashed a palace security pass through the glass. David waved the car forward. Standard procedure. But something felt wrong. The pass looked real, but the driver's face was unfamiliar. David raised his hand. The car stopped. He stepped closer, boots clicking on wet pavement. His breath fogged in the cold air. Through the window, he saw the driver's eyes, nervous, darting. "Lower the window, please," David said, his voice steady. The window came down an inch. The driver was young, maybe 30. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chill. "I have clearance," he said quickly. "I'm expected." David didn't move. "Name and department." The driver hesitated. "Just a second." But David caught it. "Thomas Blake, Royal Household Staff, Catering Division." David knew the catering staff. He'd seen them 100 times. This man wasn't one of them. "Step out of the vehicle." The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. For a moment, David thought he might reverse and speed away. But the man opened the door slowly. He was tall, wearing a cheap suit that didn't match the expensive car. Behind them, tourists started filming. Phones raised. Whispers growing louder. "I need to see identification," David said. His hand moved to his radio and the vehicle registration. Before you continue this story, if you're enjoying these kinds of powerful real-life mysteries, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Thomas reached into his jacket. David's muscles tensed, but the man pulled out a wallet. He handed over a driver's license. David studied it. The name matched. The photo matched. But something still felt off. "Wait here," David ordered. He stepped back and spoke into his radio. "Southgate to control. I need verification on a Thomas Blake, claiming catering division." The response came fast. "No Thomas Blake on staff. Repeat, no record." David's pulse quickened. He looked back at the car. Through the rear window, he could see shapes in the back seat, covered with a dark cloth. Boxes, maybe, or bags. His training kicked in. "Sir, I'm going to need you to open the trunk." Thomas's face went pale. "I can explain. Open the trunk. Now." The man backed toward the car, but his hand went to his pocket instead. David's hand shot to his weapon. Other guards converged. Shouts erupted. Tourists screamed and scattered. The moment stretched like elastic about to snap. Thomas pulled his hand out slowly. "Not a weapon." "Please," he said, voice shaking. "I need to call someone." "Someone inside. They'll verify everything." "Who?" David demanded. "Give me a name." Thomas looked at the palace windows. "Second floor. The East Wing." His eyes were desperate now. "Lady Catherine Monroe. She knows I'm coming. She arranged everything." David felt his stomach drop. "Lady Catherine Monroe. Senior lady in waiting to the Queen Consort. One of the most trusted members of the royal household. Why would she send an unauthorized vehicle? Why would she bypass security protocols? Unless she was hiding something." David kept his weapon ready. "Control, check on Lady Catherine Monroe. Current location." Static crackled. Then, "Lady Monroe called in sick this morning. Not on palace grounds." The air turned electric. Thomas was sweating freely now. The covered shapes in the back seat seemed to pulse with possibility, danger, secrets. David made a decision. "Yeah, you're not going anywhere until we search that vehicle." Asterisk, 2 more guards flanked the Mercedes. While David approached the trunk, his heart hammered against his ribs. Behind the gates, dozens of phones captured every second. This would be on social media within minutes. International news by noon. He couldn't afford a mistake. "Open it," David repeated. Thomas's hands trembled as he pressed the key fob. The trunk popped open with a soft click. David lifted the lid slowly. Inside cardboard boxes, 4 of them, plain, unmarked, sealed with packing tape. "What's in these?" David asked. "Documents," Thomas said quickly. "Just documents. Lady Monroe asked me to deliver them. Private papers. Nothing dangerous." David pulled a knife from his belt and sliced through the tape on the first box. He opened the flaps. Inside, manila folders. Stacks of them. He pulled one out. The pages inside were covered in handwritten notes, names, dates, account numbers. At the top of the first page, a royal crest watermark. His blood ran cold. These weren't ordinary documents. These were classified. Financial records. Private correspondence. Things that should never leave the palace vaults. "Where did you get these?" David's voice was sharp now. Thomas backed against the car. "I told you. Lady Monroe. She said they needed to be moved for safekeeping. I'm just doing what I was told. You're not palace staff." "You lied about that? So who are you really?" The young man's face crumbled. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. "I'm her nephew. Thomas Blake is my real name. She called me 2 days ago. Said she needed help. Said it was urgent. Family helps family, right? I didn't know it would be like this." David's mind raced. A senior royal aide using her own nephew to smuggle classified documents out of Buckingham Palace. Why? What was she running from? Or what was she protecting? "Control," David said into his radio. "We need senior security here immediately. And someone from the royal household. We have a situation." Within minutes, the South Gate became a circus. Black SUVs pulled up. Men in suits poured out. Palace security. Scotland Yard. Someone even higher up the chain. David recognized the lead investigator. Detective Inspector Sarah Chen. She'd worked royal protection for a decade. Sarah walked straight to the Mercedes. She looked at the boxes. Then at Thomas. Then at David.
"Good work, Sergeant."
"Very good work." "Ma'am, he claims Lady Catherine Monroe sent him. Says these are documents she wanted moved." Sarah's expression didn't change, but David saw something flash in her eyes. Recognition. Maybe even fear. "Take him into custody. Secure the vehicle. No one touches those boxes until we get clearance from the top." 2 officers led Thomas away. He didn't resist. Just looked back at the palace one more time, like he was hoping someone would appear at a window and save him. "No one did." Sarah turned to David. "What made you stop the car?" "Instinct, ma'am." The past looked real, but something felt wrong. His face, his behavior. "When I called it in and learned he wasn't on staff, I knew." "You may have just prevented a major security breach," Sarah said quietly. "Or exposed one that's already happened." "Ma'am, what's in those documents?" Sarah glanced around. Tourists were still filming from a distance. Guards held them back, but phones were everywhere. She lowered her voice. "If I had to guess, evidence. Lady Monroe has been under quiet investigation for 3 months. Financial irregularities. Missing funds from royal accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger. We thought we had her contained. But if she's trying to move documents, she's running," David finished, "or preparing to. These boxes might contain everything we need to build a case. Or everything she needs to destroy evidence and disappear." A senior aide came rushing from the palace. Lord Philip Ashford, controller of the royal household. His face was red, angry. "What is the meaning of this spectacle?" he demanded. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The press will have a field day." Sarah stood her ground. "Sir, we've intercepted what appears to be classified palace documents being removed without authorization by someone claiming to act on behalf of Lady Monroe." Lord Ashford's anger evaporated instantly. His skin went gray. "Lady Monroe? That's impossible. She's not even here today. Exactly, sir. Which raises the question, where is she? Lord Ashford pulled out his phone, dialed, waited. His jaw tightened. It's going to voicemail. Sarah nodded to one of her officers. Get a team to her residence. Now, David watched it all unfold. This was bigger than a stopped car. Bigger than smuggled documents. This was betrayal at the highest level. Someone the royal family trusted. Someone with access to their most private affairs. And she'd tried to use her own nephew to cover her tracks. The officer returned 20 minutes later. His face said everything. Ma'am, Lady Monroe's flat is empty. Looks like she cleared out fast. Neighbors say they saw her leave early this morning with suitcases. Sarah closed her eyes. She's gone. But we have the documents, David said. Whatever she was planning, we stopped it. Sarah looked at him. Maybe. Or maybe we only stopped part of it. The question now is, what else did she take? And who helped her? By noon, the story exploded. News helicopters circled Buckingham Palace. Reporters crowded the gates. Royal aid and security breach screamed the headlines. David watched from inside the palace walls as the world outside went mad. But inside, something even more dramatic was unfolding. The documents from the Mercedes sat on a table in a secure room. Sarah Chen stood over them with 2 senior investigators and a representative from the royal household. David had been asked to stay. His testimony would be crucial. He watched as they carefully examined each page. These are financial transfers, one investigator said. Amounts ranging from 5,000 to 50,000 pounds. All from discretionary royal accounts. Dates go back 18 months, another added. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was systematic theft. Sarah held up a particular document. A handwritten letter on royal stationery. She read aloud. The matter must be handled delicately. If word gets out, the damage to the family's reputation would be irreparable. I trust your discretion, absolutely. Destroy this after reading. Who's it addressed to? Lord Ashford asked, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah turned the letter over. No signature. But the royal crest at the top was unmistakable. It's written on the Queen Consort's personal stationery. The room went silent. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Either the Queen Consort was involved, or someone had used her stationery to cover their tracks. Either possibility was devastating. Lord Ashford sank into a chair. This can't be happening. There's more, Sarah said. She pulled out another folder. Bank statements. Offshore accounts. Wire transfers to addresses in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Monaco. Lady Monroe wasn't just stealing. She was moving money for someone. Or with someone. How much total? Lord Ashford asked. Based on what we have here, just over 2 million pounds. The number hit like a physical blow. 2 million pounds stolen from royal accounts. Under everyone's noses. For 18 months, David spoke up. If she's been planning this for that long, she's had time to prepare an escape. She could be anywhere by now. Sarah nodded. We've already alerted airports and border control. But if she planned properly, she left the country before we even stopped her nephew. Why use him? One investigator asked. Why not just leave and take the documents with her? Insurance, Sarah said. Or misdirection. She sends the nephew with obvious evidence. We catch him. We think we've stopped her plan. Meanwhile, she's already gone with the real prize. David asked. Sarah looked at him. Whatever wasn't in those boxes. The realization spread through the room. They'd only caught what Lady Monroe wanted them to catch. The question was, what had she kept? An officer burst in. Ma'am, we just got a hit. Lady Monroe's passport was scanned at Heathrow at 7 this morning. British Airways flight to Dubai. She left hours before her nephew showed up at the gate, Sarah said. She knew we'd catch him. She knew we'd find the documents. This was a diversion. Lord Ashford stood. We need to contact Dubai authorities. Have her arrested the moment she lands. The officer shook his head. The flight landed 3 hours ago. She cleared customs. After that, We have no record of her movements. Dubai doesn't extradite easily, Sarah muttered. Especially not for non-violent crimes. She chose her destination carefully. David's mind worked through the timeline. Lady Monroe had called in sick that morning, sent her nephew to the palace with incriminating evidence, boarded a flight while he was still driving to London. By the time Thomas Blake was stopped at the South Gate, she was already landing in another country. It was brilliant and cold. What about the nephew? David asked. Does he know anything useful? He's being questioned now, Sarah said. So far, he's sticking to his story. Aunt needed help. Family loyalty. He claims he didn't know what was in the boxes. Do we believe him? Honestly. Yes. I think she used him. Sacrificed him to buy herself time and throw us off the real trail. Lord Ashford slumped forward. The royal family will be devastated. Lady Monroe has been with the household for 12 years. The Queen Consort trusted her completely. It's exactly why she got away with it for so long, Sarah said. Trust is a weapon when you know how to use it. David thought about the moment at the gate, the nervous driver, the covered boxes, his instinct to stop the car. If he'd waved it through like normal, those documents would have disappeared. Maybe forever. But now they had evidence. They had a trail. What happens next? He asked. Sarah gathered the documents carefully. We analyze every page, track every transaction, find out who else was involved. Because Lady Monroe didn't do this alone. Someone inside the palace helped her access these accounts. Someone gave her that stationery. Someone looked the other way. You think there's another insider? I think there might be several. And now that Lady Monroe's gone, they're panicking, wondering if she kept records of their involvement, wondering if we'll find their names in these papers. Lord Ashford stood. I need to inform the senior royals, discreetly. This cannot become a public circus more than it already has. Too late for that, sir, David said, glancing toward the window. Outside, the crowd had tripled. News vans lined the street. Then we contain what we can, Lord Ashford said firmly. And we find out the truth. All of it. As the meeting broke up, Sarah pulled David aside. You did good work today, Sergeant. Really good work. Just doing my job, ma'am. It was more than that. You trusted your instincts. In this world, at this level, people stop trusting their gut. They assume everyone belongs. You didn't, David nodded. But something still bothered him. Ma'am, why would she risk sending her nephew if she was already gone? Why not just disappear completely? Sarah smiled grimly. Because she wanted us to know. Wanted us to find those documents. Every page in there implicates someone else. Colleagues, superiors, maybe even members of the royal family itself. She's not just running away. She's burning down the house behind her. 3 days later, the truth began to surface. Not in press conferences or official statements, but in quiet arrests. A finance officer removed from his duties. A senior administrator placed on leave. 2 more household staff questioned and released. The investigation spread like cracks in ice. David Hale watched it unfold from his post. Life at the palace had changed. Extra security at every gate. Background checks being run on everyone. Trust, once given freely, now had to be earned twice over. The tourists still came, but their cameras now pointed at the South Gate, the spot where it all began. Sarah Chen visited him on the 4th day. She looked tired. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. We found something, she said. In the documents, a name you should know about. They walked to a quiet corner of the grounds. Away from ears and cameras, Sarah pulled out a printed page. A bank statement. One of the offshore accounts. It shows regular deposits over the past year. Small amounts. 2,000 here. 3,000 there. Nothing that would raise flags. But they add up. Whose account? Thomas Blake's. Lady Monroe's nephew. David felt his stomach turn. He said he didn't know. He lied. Or maybe he knew, but didn't understand the scale. Either way, he was paid. Every time money was moved from royal accounts, a percentage went to him. She was buying his silence, or his help, so he was part of it all along. At some level, yes. When we confronted him with the evidence, he broke. Admitted she'd been using him for months. Small errands at first. Delivering packages, picking up documents. He said he thought it was legitimate household business, but he knew it wasn't. Sarah nodded. Deep down, yes, he knew. But family loyalty is powerful, and so is money when you're struggling to pay rent. David thought about the moment at the gate. Thomas's sweating face. His nervous hands. He was terrified because he knew he'd been caught, because he knew what it meant for his aunt. She'd told him if anything went wrong just to stay quiet. She'd protect him, but she didn't protect him. She ran and left him holding evidence that would send him to prison. What happens to him? He'll face charges, theft, conspiracy. He'll probably get 5 years, maybe less with cooperation. But his life is effectively over. No job will touch him after this. David felt an unexpected wave of pity. Thomas had been used, manipulated by someone he trusted, someone who shared his blood, and Lady Monroe. Sarah's expression hardened. Still in Dubai, but we're building an international case. Financial fraud, theft, breach of trust. The evidence in those boxes is damning, and it goes higher than we thought. How high? Sarah hesitated. Then, Lord Ashford is being questioned. One of the letters in the documents references conversations he had with Lady Monroe about budget discretions. He claims he didn't know she was stealing, but his signature is on approval forms for some of the transfers. You think he was involved? I think he was careless, or willfully blind. At that level, people don't want to see problems. They want everything to run smoothly. So when someone like Lady Monroe says she needs to move funds for legitimate reasons, they sign off without looking too closely. What about the royal family? Clean. Completely. The Queen consort is devastated. She trusted Lady Monroe completely. Considered her a friend. This betrayal cuts deep. But there's no evidence any royal family member knew what was happening. David felt relief. At least that part of the story was clean. So what now? Now we rebuild. New protocols. New oversight. The kind of theft Lady Monroe pulled off shouldn't be possible. But it was. Because people trusted the system. Trusted each other. That trust is broken now. They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the palace grounds stretched green and perfect. Tourists took photos. Guards stood at attention. On the surface, everything looked normal. But underneath, the foundation had cracked. Sergeant Hale, Sarah said, you're going to be called to testify. At Thomas Blake's trial, maybe at others, if more arrests happen. Your actions that morning are the key to the entire case. Without you stopping that car, we might never have found the evidence. I just did my job. You did more than that? You trusted your instincts when it would have been easier to wave him through? That's the difference between a good guard and an exceptional one. 2 months later, David stood in a ceremony room inside Buckingham Palace. Senior officers lined the walls. Press cameras captured every moment. He was awarded a commendation for outstanding service. The Queen Consort herself presented it. She shook his hand, her eyes kind but sad. Thank you, Sergeant, she said quietly. For your vigilance and your courage? David nodded. He didn't feel courageous. He'd just done what training and instinct told him to do. But maybe that was courage. Doing the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. Thomas Blake was sentenced to 4 years. He cried when the verdict was read. His family sat in the back of the courtroom. His mother looked broken. David attended the sentencing. He wanted to see it through. The young man who'd sat in that Mercedes, sweating and terrified, now wore prison clothes. A life derailed by choices and family loyalty misplaced. Lady Catherine Monroe never returned to Britain. She lived quietly in Dubai, reportedly working as a consultant for wealthy families. Interpol kept her on their watch list, but without extradition, she remained untouchable. The money she'd stolen was never fully recovered. Some was frozen in offshore accounts. The rest had disappeared into the global financial system. Lord Ashford resigned. No charges were filed, but his reputation was destroyed. He issued a statement taking responsibility for failing to provide adequate oversight. He looked 20 years older when he left the palace for the last time. The scandal eventually faded from front pages. New stories replaced it. But inside the palace walls, the changes remained. Tighter security, stricter financial controls, and guards who looked twice at every car, every pass, every face. David returned to his post at the South Gate. Tourists still took photos. Redcoats still stood frozen. But now, when a car approached, he studied it carefully. Every time, no exceptions. Because trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. And some betrayals never fully heal. On quiet mornings, when fog rolled across the palace grounds and the city was just waking, David would stand at his post and remember that October morning, the black Mercedes. The nervous driver. The moment he raised his hand and said, "Stop." One decision. One moment. It had changed everything. And somewhere in Dubai, Lady Catherine Monroe probably remembered it too. The morning her perfect plan fell apart because a guard trusted his instincts. Because someone looked closer instead of looking away. The truth had exploded that day at Buckingham Gate. Not with violence or drama, but with the quiet power of one person doing their job right. And in the end, that was enough to bring down a scheme 18 months in the making. The palace still stood. The guards still marched. Tourists still came. But everyone who worked those gates now knew the lesson that October morning had taught. Trust, but verify. Watch, but question. And when something feels wrong, no matter how small, never ignore that feeling, because sometimes the smallest instinct saves everything.